Hi, my name is Alini Ponce. I'm starting a new podcast. I am a student and seeker of all things spiritual. I love talking to people. If I'm interested in this topic, there might be others out there who are also interested. We'll be talking about mediumship and psychic work. We'll be talking about communicating with the other side, intuition, all sorts of things. I couldn't think of a better person to start this podcast with than my dear friend Cass, who I actually met in a mediumship class that I was taking. And from the get-go, we just had this very strong bond. And she's doing amazing things out there. She's well known on TikTok now for doing live readings, mediumship and psychic readings, shadow work classes with her students and one-on-one sessions. I will definitely link her information. Today, we are starting out talking about shadow work, how to get more in touch with the depth of who we are and why we're here and all that juicy stuff. We also talk about mediumship and development. Lots of interesting things come out of this conversation today. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, do whatever it is that we do here in YouTube land. But I just really appreciate you being here.
I think we have a choice to tune into the light or to not. And so for me, I didn't have any belief system before I was 30 years old. I didn't know or believe that there was a God or a universe or source or our past loved ones were really in heaven. I didn't believe in heaven, nothing. And I used substances and other things to numb out my experience. And I realize now that that was honestly one of the greatest blessings of my life, because now that I have consciously decided to tune into the light and to shift the way that I experience my humanness in this world, like I can use all of that to help others and help myself. But for those that are in that state of not trusting and not allowing the light in, it's hard for me to say this, but it is just this. We have the choice.
Thank you for being here, Cass. I'm so excited to talk to you. I actually wanted to share that we actually met probably a few years ago now, like 2 to 3 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, and we met through mediumship classes and attending circles, and just I immediately felt this resonance with you and how you read for people and your style, your vibe. I just was like, I need to know this girl. I need to be friends with this girl. So,
do you remember the first time we practiced together?
No.
Like separate? I feel like it's like we met out in public and then it's like the first time we have our alone date. Like is how it feels. Because I was like looking for a practice circle on a Saturday afternoon, and there's not usually a lot of practice circles on weekends. And all morning, I'm thinking, I really would love to practice. I really would love to practice. And then I got out of work that afternoon and I looked at my phone, and this woman had messaged me on Facebook like randomly. It was like, hey, I saw you in a practice circle. Would you want to practice today? And I was like, yeah, I would.
Yeah.
And then
I got a little hint from Spirit, like, send her a private message. You guys need to connect.
Yeah. It was perfect.
Yeah. And then from that moment, I think we just not only enjoyed practicing together, but also I feel like, a friendship of sorts started developing because of our resonance with mediumship, because of our resonance with our own spiritual journeys. I feel weirdly enough like we're a very different age, and also where I come from versus where you come from is very different, but somehow there's that resonance of spirit that does not care about any of that, because those are just ego identities anyways. And and at the core it felt like a soul sisterhood of some sort, and I'm just glad that we followed that little inkling from Spirit, and here we are today. And I am just so extremely proud to know you, to see the work that you're doing with mediumship, how many lives you're touching with your gift, and it's just amazing. So that's why I've been really excited to talk to you, pick your brain, because I think that's one of my favorite activities with you.
Thank you for your kind words, by the way.
No problem. But like, I'm always like, Cass, please, I need to pick your brain about something. So I really appreciate you making the time. Um,
Yeah, thank you for having me. I feel like we're sisters in another life for sure.
yeah, there's definitely that. Okay, so I don't even know where to start, but maybe we'll start at the beginning. And if you can give us, a synopsis of like maybe how you got into spirituality, into mediumship, all of that stuff. I think that might be a good way for us to start opening up to other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Just about 3 years ago now, I went through a time in my life that was everything kind of came crashing down. And I think this is pretty common within spiritual awakenings where your career, your relationships, and just everything just kind of like stops. And you're like, who am I? What am I? And how do I move forward? And so that happened to me about 3 years ago. And I got to this place in my life where I was like, I just need to change. I need to be different. I had used substances a lot in my life to help kind of numb out the human experience. I had no belief system in anything spiritual. And I always had felt like something had been missing in my life. And so when I got to this really dark point, I just had to find something. And I started to recognize the signs and synchronicities that had ramped up at that time and recognized how spirit had always been a part of my life and looked back at my life in different ways things had worked out or different lessons that I kept repeating and things like that. And I just dove into healing myself. And as I started to heal myself, I started to open up more and more to spirit, which then led to, me taking a mediumship class and just different signs and synchronicities that would lead me to the next step, which then led me to being a professional psychic medium and spiritual coach to help others go through that same process.
Yeah, that's incredible. Would you say that the catalyst, like the biggest catalyst for you getting into mediumship was the pain of disconnection? Is that something that one can assume is what led you to really like full on like I'm intentionally doing this now?
Yeah, yeah. I think I just started to really pay attention to the signs and synchronicities. Like, for example, I was just driving around aimlessly one morning, and this was prior to me believing in anything or having any sort of spiritual awakening, like almost a year prior to my real dark night of the soul, which is what it's called when you go through like everything changing and shifting for you. So a year prior to that, I'd been driving around and there was a used bookstore and it kind of caught my eye on the way to work. And I didn't really have enough time to stop, but it just caught my eye. And I was like, I haven't been in a bookstore in years, but I used to love to read. So I'm going to stop at the bookstore. And I went into the bookstore and it was like kind of like dirty and dungy. And I was like, why am I here? Like, this is so weird. Why did I stop? I have to go to work. Like, what am I doing? And I was just like, I was just pulled to the back corner of the bookstore and I'm like, what am I doing here? But I felt something, but it wasn't conscious. Like, I'm just like, all right, what am I doing here? And a bright orange book caught my eye. It was like sticking out of the top shelf. And I didn't know what section I was in or anything. And I reached for it and it was How to Be a Psychic Medium for Dummies. And I was so freaked out. I was like, this is so weird. Like, I was feeling weird in here. And now the psychic medium thing is in front of me. Like, what is going on? And I was like, I bought the book, but I was like shaking. And I was like, had this whole story of how I was going to tell the person that was checking me out that it was for my friend and it wasn't for me and that I'm not weird and all these things, right? So it was like those kind of experiences that I had happened, like that I had pushed away, I had been embarrassed about, that I had just completely shut out. That then when I broke down to, my 10-year career ended, a relationship ended, and I just was like sitting there like, who am I? All of those moments that I had pushed away started to come like flooding back to me like, hello, this led to this, led to this. So I think it was that moment of just, really feeling my own soul for the first time in a long time because I didn't have anything else around me that then reminded me of all the little signs and synchronicities that had happened in the past that then led me to the platform that I was at as this broken down human, but this blank slate too. And I always say like, it was the darkest moment in my life that led me to the lightest, but it was a conscious choice to like pay attention to those signs and synchronicities and start to work and heal myself. And then the healing actually brought me closer to spirit and closer to like believing, as I started to like see changes in my life positively happen as I did the healing work, I was like, okay, I am supported. There has to be more. Like, what is the more?
Yeah, it's 1000%. Would you say that us sort of getting to that place where one could describe like rock bottom
Yep.
allows that opening to happen, and then therefore like, okay, now there's space for something else that wasn't there before, or that has been there but hasn't really shown through to come through. And would you say that, we our egoic minds want to run away from those moments, right? We fill our lives with things, with friends, with relationships and to-do lists, so that we're just constantly inundated with activity and distraction. But then what really our soul craves for our own understanding of who we are and what we came here to do is that silence, is that space. So now when people come to you, I mean, that can be a question that I'll ask you later. Like, how do you help them navigate through those, dark nights of the soul, and allow them to like find their own path? Because obviously not all of us were meant to be mediums or psychic mediums. Some of us came here with other quote unquote missions. But would you say that the path to us finding out who we are is the path of surrender? What comes to mind with that
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, I definitely think that rock bottom is a really useful tool for the universe to use to get us out of our egos, especially when we're confronted with things, tragedies such as like losses, grief, or just endings within our life. Anything like that is not only going to create space for us, but it's going to take us out of our ego and into our heart space. It's like a huge heart chakra activation, whether we're conscious of it or not, where it's like, okay, what is the point of me being here? And what brought me here? And why am I going through this? And who am I? And for me, looking back at my life, I had learned very early on to kind of avoid or numb out that space and that feeling of the heart because of things that have happened in my childhood. And I think that's pretty common for people who are, on a spiritual path. I was just actually just talking about this today with a friend that I have yet to meet someone, and it's not to say they're not out there, but I've yet to meet someone that's deep on a spiritual path that hasn't been through something traumatic. Just being human, I think, is traumatic in and of itself. And so we all have these varying degrees of trauma, which we really can't, put on like a scale, right? Because everybody's experiencing it in their own way. Somebody's major trauma could be somebody's minor trauma, but vice versa. Like other people feel so much deeper, and those little things are major for them. And so I think just being human, we are experiencing really difficult and painful things constantly that do put us into our mind and our ego instead of our heart space. And when we're broken and we're open and we're cracked open through these like experiences when we're meant to awaken, because everything is for a divine plan and divine timing, it does allow us to kind of just get into our own soul. Like, why are you here? What are you doing? And then that purpose question comes up. And I think that's the first question that anybody asks when they're starting on a spiritual awakening is like, okay, I feel called for something more. What's my purpose? And the purpose for what I gather through my own experiences and coaching others is not necessarily that someone's a healer or someone's a psychic medium or someone's just meant to, solve generational trauma and shift their family's frequency for the rest of time. But it's actually to come home to yourself and be as comfortable as possible, just aligning to your truth and your soul, which is really hard for us as humans because as little kids, we're taught that that's not what you're supposed to do. Like you're supposed to act a certain way and do a certain thing and hide your emotions and all the things, and being yourself and fully expressing that is the hardest thing to do. But I think that's all of our purposes here.
If I were to ask you, with everything that you've experienced in your own personal life and now that you experience with clients and coaching and doing readings, what would you say is the biggest cause of human suffering? I know that's a
That's a
loaded question.
that's a question, Elise.
That's a huge question, but I'm very interested to see what your take is on that.
Yeah. Our biggest cause of human suffering is just our mind's attachment to how things should be versus how they are. And a lot of times, like in my shadow work class, we talk about how even parental roles and how conditioning of this starts so early, like this suffering pattern, not only learning from your family members and how they're reacting to different things that happen in their lives, but how you expect your mother to act a certain way. You expect your father to act a certain way based on the friends that you have or the TV shows that you watch. And so from a very early age, when things aren't meeting our expectations of what we think they should be, we feel as though we're suffering. And then we take that lens and we place it on everything in our life, whether it's a boss that doesn't treat you fairly, and it's just this constant comparison energy, and us being in our minds trying to rationalize what should be worth versus what shouldn't be, when in reality we have peace and balance and wholeness within, but we don't stop long enough to feel that within ourselves or find that within ourselves. And therefore we're constantly just looking at the negative. And so that's why someone can have major trauma that they get through pretty well without suffering too much, or somebody can have minor conditioning and programming things that really take them out, and it's major trauma for them, and how everything is conditional based on your human experience and how your mind is aligning to your soul, and if it is.
Yes, that makes sense. Um, you mentioned your shadow work class, and not everyone is familiar with what shadow work means. Like, and sometimes I think even when we think we know what it means, maybe it's not quite there. Would you mind giving us like a little bit of an overview of what shadow work is and what is its intention?
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to talk about. I talk about it all the time. I think it's one of the most valuable ways that we can heal ourselves in this kind of human experience. So I had explored many different types of therapies, and I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, so I was familiar with different kinds of therapies when I started on this path of healing. And I tried traditional forms of therapy, and I tried all of the breath work and the tapping and all the things that can help us, feel into who we are again and get us out of our minds. But I always felt like there was something missing, and I discovered shadow work. And through like this viral shadow work journal on TikTok, I think, or Amazon. And I got the journal in the mail, and I looked at it and I started doing it. And it was really helpful in getting to the root cause of where we started to separate from our light. And essentially, this journal that I originally got was just journal prompts, kind of reminding you of your childhood and really getting into where your personality started to shift based on the traumas, wounds, conditionings, and programmings that you've gone through versus who you actually are inside. And so I started doing this journal, and then I started feeling really called to explore like the chakras and how energy works. And I saw such a correlation beyond just what the journal was offering with shadow work, but how the shadow is an energetic kind of storm that exists within our energy field that then affects our energy centers that process how we experience life. So how we take in emotions, how we process any sort of stimuli that comes into our fields. And so I started to develop kind of just my own way for myself of a chakra balancing meditation and check-in with myself, in addition to doing the reflection work with the journaling, and getting into the inner child. And so shadow work, I think, is a combination of these different faculties, like doing inner child work, journaling, and reprogramming the way that you're processing energy and emotions in order to come back to who you really are and stop acting out of the energetic storm that has accumulated within your field because of all the stuff of your past. So we carry all of these wounds and all of these judgments and all of this fear with us because of the things that have happened in the past. But when we can let go of that through getting to the root cause in the inner child and move forward in a lighter and brighter way and really just like come back into who we are inside, it's super helpful. And so that's kind of what shadow work is from my perception, and how I've implemented it into my own life to heal, and how I developed a course that I do live where it's a mixture of like that original journaling plus some spiritual kind of things to help. And then I always say, like, I think shadow work can also include breath work and tapping and things like that, but those are supportive mechanisms to the deep root cause of what went wrong and why, and how to come to terms with that and accept that and move forward in the latest and brightest way.
Yes, and I it's interesting that we're talking about this because, we live in a society where we tend to want to only, highlight the light, highlight the positive attributes, highlight, all the beauty and the
Yeah.
magic, even
Yeah.
in the spiritual community where
Yes.
so can you talk a little bit about that and why it can become also a trap?
Yeah. 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 That's what I found when I started exploring spirituality. And I got into crystals first, and then I got into meditating, and I think they're all valuable, especially meditation. It's kind of a different topic, but all of those things are super helpful. And we can even align our body to relax more and things. But is your soul in alignment with your mind, in alignment with your body? And I don't think that that can happen through those avenues until you go into the darkest places that you don't want to go into. You might convince yourself that you're healed. You might convince yourself that you feel lighter. But when you're in an interaction in your day-to-day life and you're triggered again, that's the cue that you haven't healed. And so that's why I love shadow work so much. It's not the most fun thing to do, but it's truly the most rewarding, because it might not feel great when you're doing it to go back into those darker places in your childhood. And I think that's similar to like traditional psychotherapy, like talk therapy. The shift with shadow work is that not only do you address that situation that happened in childhood, but you find the silver lining in it, which is really difficult, but like the lesson that was learned from it, because from a spiritual perspective, everything that's on our path is for a reason and for us to learn, grow, and evolve from. So if there are no coincidences, right, even the darker stuff that we encountered within our childhood, it does lead us into being who we are as an adult. And we can't go back in time and change what happened. So if we can take the lesson and the brightness from that dark situation, that's how we can really use it as a platform to align to our truth and to help others and to help ourselves. But I'm getting off topic. Essentially, when we're only looking at the light, that darkness is just lingering in here. And we can kind of like shift and convince ourselves. Our minds are really, really good at that, to convince ourselves that we're happy and we're good. And then, but we're triggered. And it's like the triggers that kept coming up for me that was like, I don't want to be triggered anymore. And I can have a good 2 weeks, but then if I'm triggered, like I just don't want that anymore. And so that's why I went really deep inside to figure out where those triggers started in my childhood and heal them. And then support with highlighting the light and loving the light as well.
Makes sense. So would you say the triggers cease to exist, or the way you respond to the triggers is what transforms and transmutes? I'm interested to see your take on that. Because as one, who has dealt with my own set of trauma and life events, and then finding myself being highly triggered with certain things, understanding that instead of seeing it and judging it as a bad thing, like you're on the spiritual path, you shouldn't be triggered anymore. Like,
Yeah.
where is all the illumination when you need it? So it's like, does it mean that you don't get triggered anymore, or that the way you deal with a life event, which, one could say are neutral events, is just our response to it that might be seen as positive or negative? So how does one, when something like that surfaces or comes up in your life, which is bound to, because we live in a world of contrast,
Yeah.
and duality. So I guess my question is, how do you now respond?
Yeah.
that is different than how you used to, I guess.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. I think that um it's twofold. I think that first of all, shadow work is and just healing is a never-ending process because we're creatures of duality. Like that's what life on earth is, and we learn from it and we grow from it. And so the first step, I think, is responding differently to the triggers. And that takes reprogramming your nervous system, retraining your ego or your mind, and also balancing your energy within and coming into your heart space more than your mind, just as you navigate. And when we talk about the heart space and the heart chakra, a lot of other spiritual people will talk about how it's like self-love and coming into a resonance of love within, and it is. I see it a little bit differently, though, than it's often talked about, where it's like that complete surrender to the fact that everything is happening for a reason in divine timing, and that everything that's on your path is simply there to teach you. And that is a gift. It's a gift to be alive, and it's a gift to learn, and it's a gift to grow. And so now when when things pop up on my path that would have typically been triggered for me, I do feel a sense of peace within. And I feel, okay, here I am. Like, and that's 9 times out of 10 now. I've been on this path for 3 years, actively working on shadow work, and for a year, like teaching this class and just dedicating my whole life to it. So it's a little bit different for me. But, the first step is just being cognizant of the trigger and recognizing like where that is that needs to be healed within you, and really like getting to the root cause and spending that time with your inner child and doing the journaling and doing the things. And also like disconnecting from the mind loop that always is just telling us crazy things that makes our nervous systems react. But so that's like the first step. And then the second step is surrender. I don't think you can surrender when your mind is just looping all the time and your nervous system is just super heightened. When I first started doing the shadow work, that's really what caused me to like I sat down on my living room floor. I was like shaking, having a panic attack. And I was like, I can't live like this anymore. I have to figure out how to calm myself down. Like I even tried, anxiety meds and all the things. And I was like, I just want to be me. How do I live as this human? I came in as a human. I got to figure it out. So yeah, it's retraining the nervous system, the mind. And once you start that work and you start to become comfortable going into the darkness and it doesn't become so scary, that's when you start to learn to surrender, even within the work. And then so you surrender within the work, which then as you go through your day-to-day life, you start to surrender as those triggers happen too. And so I would say now at 90% was a little high, probably like 80% of the time, I'm like, oh, okay, this is happening. This is a mirror for me, or this is here to teach me this. All right, I'm protected, I'm guided. And it's not just like I'm protected, I'm guided, and I'm loved. I'm me, my soul signed up for this, and I'm capable of handling this and moving through this in a way that's going to help me grow.
Love that. So, if I'm understanding this right, what has dramatically changed has also to do with your non-attachment to the trigger or to the evocation of whatever comes up for you.
Yep.
Complete awareness of what is happening right now versus going into some past loop
Yep.
of what that
or the future for that matter.
Yeah.
Yep.
So highly, high presence. And
Yep.
then the other is non-judgment
Yeah.
of the event, meaning
Yes.
like this is, if I see this as a opportunity versus a curse,
Exactly.
which in the moment, sometimes it does. It feels like, what the hell is going on? Why
Yeah.
am I shaking? And
How could I ever want this for myself?
exactly.
That's the question. Yeah.
If what people say out there is true, that we've signed up for this life, that we've made conscious contracts with certain people, certain lessons that we were meant to learn, there's no way that at one point you're not questioning yourself like, what the hell was I thinking up there?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not cute, guys.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Sorry. So I feel like that's really helpful in itself, like just having those elements present, meaning like bringing yourself to the present moment, knowing that this is also a mind trip, right? Because a lot of times when things come up for us multiple times, it's just we get a habitual response to them. So retraining, reprogramming
Yep.
yourself to have a different response isn't, would you say that that in itself is also part of the shadow work?
Yeah. 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 I think that that's probably 50% of it. And then, yeah, it's 50% reprogramming and retraining the nervous system, the mind, and um, 50% of the surrender and the energy work. And that's why when I was doing the journal at first, which it's like super helpful. I have it. Oh, I have it somewhere here. But it's super helpful in like just getting you started into just reflection
Hmm.
of kind of that reprogramming and stuff like that. But what I noticed when I started it, and it's why I developed the class that I did, is that our emotional center, which actually is energy, um, is just as much needs to be cleared out and reprogrammed just as much as like the actual mind loop and the experiences from the past. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, 100%. Um, Changing gears a little bit, because I know
Hmm.
we could talk about shadow work all day,
I know,
all
I really could.
night. But I wanna see if you can connect maybe to um, how beneficial shadow work is when we are on our spiritual path. And also in regards to, like, let's say something like training yourself to become a medium or a psychic medium, how useful is the tool of self-awareness? How useful is the tool of shadow work when you're dabbling, I want to use that, maybe that word, dabbling into
Yeah,
figuring out your gifts, that we all come
yeah.
with. So if you don't mind speaking a little bit on that.
Yeah, of course. I feel that it's the most important part of developing our spiritual gifts, to be honest. I think that most people that are exploring their spiritual gifts are empaths, and empaths are highly sensitive to energy. And I believe that that's from actually conditioning and trauma in the childhood. Typically, I think it's twofold. It's we were born sensitive to energy, but also we were conditioned and programmed in early childhood to have to be very sensitive to the energy around us. So there was most likely some sort of parent or someone in the house that you really had to tune in your energy to keep yourself safe, or maybe like shift the way that you reacted in some situations in order to keep yourself safe. So you develop this high sensitivity to the energy around you. And so empaths are going around taking in the darker energy of humans around us because that's what we had to do to keep ourselves safe as kids. How that translates into becoming a psychic medium is that most people are just sensitive to energy that are coming down this path. But what happens is that because it's coming from a place of a trauma or a wound, you're picking up on the kind of denser energy that exists. And you're constantly in that mind loop of, am I doing this right? Is it enough? And all of those things that you said to yourself as a kid about something completely different are actually now relevant to your development as a psychic medium or anything within the spiritual realm. So by doing shadow work and, coming into a place of surrender is the most beautiful thing that you can do to help your mediumship, because not only are you not going to feel drained as you develop your mediumship, you are going to have more, I don't even want to say confidence because it's not confidence, but you're going to have more peace as you do it. And you will feel aligned to how to do it for your best path. And you will pick up on the beautiful energy that exists within the universe. A lot of times, people that are starting out within mediumship that have a lot of wounds, I notice get physically hurt, like they are taking in spirit in a way that is reflective of their wounds and their trauma rather than the light that exists. So you might hear people, developing mediums, I dare say on TikTok. I'm on TikTok a lot, as you know, like doing my stuff, and I see other mediums there that are developing, that are doing readings. And it's just that they're doing it from a place of judgment, or they're doing it from a place of fear, or, they're picking up on negative energies around people, when in reality, I don't believe that there are negative energies around people that are there to be picked up on. It's more of a reflection of either the person who's receiving the reading has darkness within them, that then the psychic medium is then connecting to their loved ones, and they're kind of like jaded by the energy of the person, and or the medium themselves has darkness within them, and then that creates a lens of darkness as they go to connect. And by clearing out that darkness and really surrendering to the light within yourself and to a higher power, and just like accepting that as the path, like it's not to learn, it's not to grow, it's just acceptance and alignment and surrender through shadow work can be so helpful in communicating with spirit in not only the clearest way and becoming the clearest channel possible for the energy to come into, but to feel good as you do it, mind, body, and spirit, like in your conscious awareness too.
Yes, I love that because I think a lot of times when, and I'll speak for myself, but when you're first, tapping into your gifts, there's so much
Yeah.
excitement and there's so much fun. One, because there is a bit of allowance because you don't
Yep.
know what to expect. There's no expectations.
Yeah.
If I sit in front of you and you tell me like what do you pick up, and I'm just like letting things flow, right?
Yeah.
And then as you begin to become more serious into your development, what I've noticed within myself and others is that it becomes also a little bit more rigid. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
have expectations now. You want to get the names. You want to get the exact details of how they pass to spirit, or there is more maybe of that ego need to prove yourself right, to prove that you are connecting to. And in the beginning, it's understood because it's like I want to make sure that I'm like literally connecting with this person's
Yeah.
loved one versus like I'm cuckoo caca, in my head.
Yeah.
So I understood that there is this need to prove even to yourself that the connection is real. How do you, what, I guess what I want to ask is what advice would you give to a developing medium in order to more easily and enjoyably unfold the gift of mediumship?
Yes, do shadow work. No, we already said that. But becoming a clear channel and surrendering is it will just align you to your true self, which feels good to connect with other energy. So what I perceive mediumship to be is just a soul to soul communication. I'm a soul, the soul and spirit is a soul. The person I'm doing the reading for is a soul. And we all exist in a higher realm, I believe, our higher selves, and there's a lot of things up in the universe, but heaven or the spirit world is a higher vibrational plane of unconditional love and light, right? So all my soul is doing when I do mediumship is asking a soul to come forward and to connect with me and exchange information. And that in messages and be a divine channel of wisdom, which the souls in spirit are a little bit more connected to God, source, universe, creator, because they're out of the physical body. And so there's just so much wisdom and light that can come from those realms through our past loved ones that then come down into the physical form through the medium, right? And so if you're a developing medium, like just relaxing into that space where you are a vessel of divine wisdom and love. It's not about proving. It's not about getting X, Y, and Z in your readings. It's about being a channel for divine wisdom and love for yourself and for others. And the more that you can really relax into it's just who you are, it's not something to learn, the easier the information comes. And I think through, developing myself and coming into a place where I'm doing a lot of like professional readings a week now, it's like the readings that I don't get a lot of evidence, right? The readings that I kind of in my human mind are like, I just don't think that one as well because I'm human, right? I'm gonna think, but at this point I'm like, okay, but it happened for a reason, whatever. But when I was starting to, it'd be like, oh, that one didn't go so well. I swear to you, I get the kindest messages from those people because I provided them as a channel of divine wisdom with exactly what they needed in that moment. And I just had a woman last week that this happened where she had a reading with me like 6 months ago. And I didn't feel like it went that well. From the human perspective, did I get the name? No. Did I get it? It felt a little bit blocked. And that just happens sometimes, whether I'm in an energetic space where that happens, or the person that I'm doing the reading for is, or this, no, it's never the soul's fault. The soul and spirit, they get a break. But it's a million different factors. We're human. And she messaged me after and said, thank you so much. And I was like, oh, in my human mind, she's just being nice, right? Like, but I'm glad that it went well. And then she just signed up for a second reading with me. So I did her reading last week, and her energy is lighter from that first reading, she said, and she felt lighter. And she was like, she truly was just, I provided in that reading exactly what she needed, which was not what my human mind would have put on paper and said that's what she needed, right? And that's the whole point, is just allowing the divine God, source, universe, creator to work through us and not have expectations of what should be. And that's what mediumship is, like remembering who we are and just enjoying that process and allowing it to flow through us.
I love that explanation, especially because, when I'm assuming a lot of mediums or developing mediums might be watching this. That's why I think
Yeah.
it's nice, good to talk about this,
Yeah.
because they know, the classes and the methodology that comes with it, and this is how you bring a spirit through. These are the things that you must pull to show that person's, especially in evidential mediumship,
Yeah.
it's part of your training. And then what I've noticed is the tendency for us to forget what really is going on here.
Yeah.
Like if you stop
like, what is going on here,
yeah,
guys? Just
to really understand what's going on here. I'm
Yeah.
not just connecting with, Bob to ask him for his name and his date of birth and, his license plate. I'm connecting to Bob because here is his daughter that he misses and loves so much. And I'm talking about his date of birth. And yes, it is part of the validation. It is part of how she knows that I am connecting truly with his soul. But then we can't lose the essence.
Yeah. I was just speaking about this earlier this week, where I don't know the exact timeline of the years, but what I gather has happened is that the original psychic mediums, let's say back in the day, just provided a lot of messages. And so then there were the scammers and the people that took advantage of that or thought that they were connecting. Maybe they were, I think that most people are connecting a little bit, even when they are scamming. I mean, our soul is a stream of energy that's connected to the other streams of energy. So I don't think that most people out there are like just completely blocked and whatever. But scammers started to come on the rise. The internet came about, right? And so a lot of psychic mediums, I'm sure, were then able to be exposed to a lot more people. And so evidential medium came to be what proved that somebody was legitimate and somebody was actually connecting to your past loved ones. What I think has happened in the past couple of years is that has been kind of taken out of context, and it's gone beyond let's validate that we're with someone's loved one to let's get facts and figures to prove that life exists after death. I think both are important, but I think that I feel that the most valuable part of mediumship is the divine wisdom and love that can come from creating a space where somebody feels their own past loved one, can feel their own connection, because I do feel that everybody is a medium. And so it's not just me doing the communication, but providing a space where they can start to feel the personality, like they can feel their loved ones around, and they can start to receive divine messages from them as well. And for me to be that conduit to kind of share whatever is meant to be shared in that moment. So the evidential piece is much smaller than the rest of it, but because of history and the internet, I think it's become this like, let's just prove there's life after death, back. And if you look at somebody like Teresa Caputo, people give her a hard time. I love her because I watched every episode at this point. She moves from her heart. Like she does get some evidence, which is, it validates that she's with somebody's loved one, but she's always, her intention in her mediumship is to release the burdens that people carry regarding the passing, like the actual passing of the soul. And so whether it was like you have guilt that you didn't say the right thing or do the right thing at the end of their passing, or you wish you could have been there more. So she tunes into that and releases that. And that's why people are so enamored by her, not because she can list the facts and figures and the birth date, but because she's helping them heal and move forward and align to their best self. Like, and that's all our past loved ones want for us. And so that is my take on that.
I love it, because that comes to my next question, which is, giving equal importance to both the evidence and the messages that come through in a reading. Because, I know you've had this experience and I've had this experience where sometimes a reading feels like it could have more, facts and figures, if that's what we want to call it. But the once the spirit proved to the sitter who they were, once we were all in alignment, okay, we have dad. This is dad. There's,
Yep.
Enough information here to recognize that this person coming through is dad. And now just allowing that reunion to happen, to allow the emotionality of the reading to take place, which one can call it more of I don't like to say this word because it has a lot of weird connotations these days, like channeling, like where you're channeling this feeling from dad towards the sitter.
Yeah.
But just sharing this emotionality that he wants to pass through to his daughter.
Yeah.
And to value that just as much. And some readings are more heavy-handed on the messages, and some readings, because of the sitter's expectations, or maybe they're a little bit more skeptical, they need more information. You can, would you say that as a medium, giving complete trust to spirit is also a way of unburdening yourself from knowing exactly what your sitter needs? Like, spirit knows, I'm just going to show up and be the messenger. Can you speak on that a little bit too?
Yeah, I feel that, we don't know what the sitter needs. They can tell us, they don't know what they need either. I don't know what I need in this moment, but I do know that even if I'm super tired as a medium and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not even sure if I can do this reading today. I'm so tired. I'm just not feeling it. I go so far as to surrender, not just in the reading, but before that, like that that human soul, alive soul, signed up for this reading at this time. Like, the universe knew that I was going to be in this state on this day. They know all, it knows all. And that is the experience we're meant to have, And so, and I've seen it happen time and time again, especially I would say in the last 3 or so months, I've really surrendered to, like, whatever state I'm in is what that person is meant to experience. I can't be perfect all the time. I can't be super high energy all of the time. I can't get a million facts all the time. I can't get really deep messages all of the time. And wherever I'm at energetically, like, that was the plan. And if it goes really south, which God forbid it only has like 2 times, I've learned the most out of those 2 times out of 1,000 readings this year. That I appreciate it. And in the moment, was I triggered or whatever because of different things that happened? Yeah, I shouldn't even say south, but just like things I had to work through in the reading. And it was just like that was for me to learn in that moment. And the worst that can happen, like when we surrender, is that we just like, we feel guilty, we feel bad, and that's so human of us. And so that's where the shadow work comes in, where we need to be able to let go of that. We need to get out of that energy in order to truly surrender and provide what we're meant to for the people that are receiving the reading.
Yes, I love that. It takes the equation of what I need versus I am stepping into being an ambassador. I'm stepping into being of service for spirit. And that immediately also, I don't know if you agree, but at least with me, it puts me on a receiving versus efforting versus
Yeah.
forcing versus needing to make it happen for that
Yeah.
person. And it's just like, okay, spirit, what does she need? What does this person in front of me need today? What does spirit want to say? And it automatically relaxes your nervous system.
Yep.
And I would love to hear you also speak on like on those readings, because again, I feel like people that do mediumship will resonate with this. Um, in those moments when you're feeling the no's are there, the information is just not quite fitting or feeling like it's hitting the right point, how do you keep yourself still in the receiving mode versus nervous system reaction? Oh shit, shit's hitting the fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
So that's where only in the past, I would say, like, I don't know, 6 months or so, have I really been able to start to let go of the nervous system reaction in full. And that's where we come back to like, am I still, do you still get triggered, and or are you just handling the triggers differently? Very, very far and few times now. Am I really being triggered that I'm not doing enough or things are going wrong? So, and if I get, sometimes I will just feel like resistance, like, okay, where do I go from here at this point? So it's different now. Like my nervous system isn't getting heightened. I used to get like red here or just like anxious. And now it's just like, okay, this is just feeling a little stuck, I guess is the word. And I just go to my friend in spirit. So the souls that are in heaven or the spirit world, they are in a state of a higher knowing of a all loving presence, right? After we go through a life review and come closer to God, source, universe, creator, they're not judgmental, they're not fearful, they're not nothing. They're my best friend for that 45 minutes, right? I look at every reading like I'm meeting somebody at a coffee shop. That somebody is the soul and spirit. And I just am getting to know them. So I just go to them and I say, and I ask the universe, all right, what's next? Like, where should we go from here? And, maybe it's a really generic piece of evidence that my ego is like, oh, yes, really? Like, this person is the most skeptical person you've ever done a reading for. They're saying no to every single thing. And now you're going to say their grandma had gray hair. And but I force myself to say it, because that's just like breaking that energetic barrier of resistance for myself, for whoever it's coming from. Like you got to break it up by just putting yourself out there. So I go back to the soul and I just say what I'm getting. And if it's not a lot, I'll say I'm not getting a lot, but I am feeling a little resistance. Do you have a little resistance to connecting to your own past loved ones due to your grief? And 9 times out of 10, it's yes. So I just say what I get, and perhaps it's applicable in a way that I can't put together, and that's okay. And just being like brutally honest with how you're feeling. I am comfortable in doing that now, as I said, within the last, I would say 6 months, 2 to 3 months of really being like really consistent with it. But now with where I'm at in my own development, which is always continuing, I just feel that I am a very clear channel, because I've dedicated my life to doing the inner work and gone through so many practices of, life happening every day, that I am comfortable being that brutally honest person, because I know that in that setting, I really feel that I'm connected to my heart, which is connected to a higher power. And so I can trust. And that's what it all comes down to. I don't think it's about having confidence or getting enough evidence or delivering the deepest message. It's just about like the trust in the divine plan and allowing it to move through you. So, but you can't do that if you're blocked energetically with fears, judgments, anxieties, and all the things.
Yeah, I think this goes back to what we were talking about. Like a lot of people will get into mediumship as a way of connecting to their spirituality, which is amazing. And a lot of us come because of our own personal experiences or suffering or loss, deep loss and grief brings us
Yep.
to mediumship. But then it's like connecting is one aspect of the work, learning to connect with spirit is one aspect of the work, but then the spiritualizing of yourself
Yes.
is part of that as well, so that you can become the clearest channel. Because
Yes.
mediumship, we do talk about all the time, like, how can I be the clearest channel for spirit? So what would you say in regards to that? How does one become the clearest channel? By doing the shadow work, by investigating
Yeah.
these deeper things that rise up inside of us. Like, let's say we do a reading and then we find ourselves, being a martyr, like, oh, why didn't I bring more evidence? Or why wasn't this message as powerful as I wanted it to be? Investigating, like, is this coming from an ego place, or is it
Yeah.
coming from really wanting to bring healing
Yeah.
and the
Exactly.
voice of spirit?
I
Yes.
feel like even in my mediumship, if we think of everything as a mirror, even in my mediumship readings and even in the earliest mediumship readings that I did, when I hit a roadblock or when I had anxiety or whatever it is, like that was a mirror for something that happened in my childhood. And so becoming spiritual and becoming a great medium, I think just isn't something outside of ourselves and isn't something that we just do within mediumship circles. Like it's a holistic thing that happens throughout our lives, and coming into that surrender to like the little things. Your coffee order you get your coffee order wrong in the morning. Are you gonna freak out? Are you gonna go like say something to the people? Or are you going to be like, oh, it's not the kind that I usually get, but it tastes pretty good. I love this. Thank you for, guiding me to a new coffee that I like. It's just like integrating all pieces of you into your soul, and the human, the alignment of the human experience to your soul's journey. And I think going back to your earlier question of, when psychics and mediums or people on their spiritual path start to open up to mediumship, but they're not going to become a professional psychic medium. Most people aren't, right? But mediumship is accessible, I believe, for everyone. And a lot of people, especially with, I swear it's the internet and social media, opening our awareness to the fact that more people can do it. I mean, there's like thousands of mediums on TikTok now. And even in the past year, I started on TikTok last September, and it's exponentially grown since last year. And recognizing that mediumship is accessible to everyone, and that the purpose of mediumship, just like the purpose of our lives, is to come home to ourselves, is to become so complete and whole within that we can connect to, all of the beautiful light that guides us via our past loved ones, our spirit guides, and our angels, and a higher power. So it's like really coming into awareness of how important it is to connect to your own team, like your spirit team, and form a deep connection to a higher power. And I think in the spiritual world, when we talk about becoming a clear channel, it's like we do the meditation at the beginning of the reading to become a clear channel. We might do some shadow work, throughout the week to also become a clear channel. And we connect to our spirit team here and there. I think becoming the clearest channel you can is integrating all of those things into every moment, And so when you go to get your coffee and you're triggered, you're immediately going into like a meditative state, like everything happens for a reason. You're connecting to your spirit team. And then you go home that night and you do some shadow work, and then you push yourself outside your comfort zone the next day and do something that you wouldn't normally do and have fun and like live. And so it's like, then you go to do a mediumship reading and you're not even thinking about how much evidence am I going to get, I feel like I'm a little tired. This isn't going to go well. It's like, okay, like this is me, this is me and this is what I do. And here we go. So, or it's, you're just in a practice circle and you just have fun and it's light and it's, not so much the technical aspects. Like we can learn the technical aspects of how to listen to names, how to, do all the things and get all the things, but it just has to be in alignment with what, does that make you feel whole inside? And that's what it's about.
I love that. I love that. Because I think what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it is really all about love. And
Yeah.
the most important one of all is learning to find that love within yourself first, for
Yes.
yourself, within yourself.
Yeah.
Recognizing that, yes, there are days when I'm going to feel more energetic and more connected to everything and everyone. And there
Yeah.
are days when I'm just
Not.
not,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's cool too. And the way that you were talking about it, it's like spiritualizing your life, not just when you are in meditation or when you're sitting in the power or when you are in circle or when you're doing a practice or professional reading, is about bringing spirit with you in every moment.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what I want to ask you about next, because you've mentioned it a couple of times and I've been meaning to ask you that. How would you recommend to someone who is not a medium, who's not a developing medium at this moment, to connect to their loved ones, or if they have interest to, connect with spirit in general? What would be your advice?
Yeah, I think meditation is probably the most important thing to start to do. And it's one of the hardest things to start to do as somebody with ADHD and just like a highly sensitive nervous system. When I started meditating, it was very hard to get myself to sit and just be at peace for a few minutes. But a lot of times when people are called to start meditating, they'll put on music and just kind of like sit there, which I don't recommend. Eventually, yes, that is beautiful. But especially if you are having trouble like paying attention and really sitting through it, meditating to a guided meditation on YouTube or whatever, there's so many free ones out there, just 5 or 10 minutes. And so, yeah, starting with meditation and not allowing yourself to leave the meditation. It's like a kid that's always asking for candy, and then you give them a piece of candy and then they keep asking for the candy. What if you allow yourself to leave the meditation one time, your brain will always want to leave the meditation because it's uncomfortable to be alone and it's uncomfortable to be in silence and be with our own thoughts, especially when we haven't done the shadow work. We haven't addressed all of the dark thoughts that we have, and our body and our minds are just running rampant on us. When we get into those silent spaces, it's really uncomfortable. And the idea of meditating is to be able to access higher levels of consciousness that can come in and help us with that, where they can only help us with that when we truly like get into a state of, and it's not like, I think people think you got to be floating amongst the clouds and all the things. You don't necessarily have to be there. Again, it's a lot to do with your heart. You just have to be open to believing that it can help. And that has to supersede your mind's attachment to what's supposed to happen and how comfortable you are within your mind space. So, really starting to meditate and stick with it. Like, I just find that a lot of people are like, yeah, I can't do it. Can't do it. Get yourself maybe in a meditation circle. There's some online. When you're around other people that are meditating, it can help you come into that state a little bit, just a relaxed state. And it doesn't have to be you're floating in the clouds at first. You just have to be relaxed and receive. Because a lot of times in meditation too, you're receiving frequency and you're receiving help, and you don't have to be conscious of it, especially at first. So yeah, meditating and then just trusting in the signs and synchronicities. It's so human of us to get a cardinal to come over to our windowsill and look at us for 10 seconds straight, which a cardinal would never do. It wouldn't come to your windowsill and just look at you and stare at you. And maybe then it like flies its wings twice and then it still stares at you. And you're like, nope, Dad, show me something better. It's like always our human mind is just asking us to show something better. So when those signs and synchronicities happen, rather than second guess it or try to say, no, it can't be, show me something better, just in the heart. Thank you. Thank you. I trust you. Maybe it's not 100% at first, maybe it's 20, but just by saying that and affirming that to yourself and feeling it in your heart space, it creates an energetic resonance of openness instead of restriction that then allows energy to come in. And the energy that the signs and synchronicities exist within from our loved ones they're basically just their soul of your loved one is like saying to the cardinal, like, go over to that windowsill. And stay there for a minute. And sometimes our past loved ones will even energetically nudge us to go certain places to do certain things. So perhaps you're sitting on your couch, not going to go to the grocery store. I always do the grocery store example. And all of a sudden on a Thursday afternoon, you're like, you know what? I need eggs. You don't really even need eggs, but I need to go to the grocery store. I need eggs. And so you go to the grocery store, you walk in and your mom's favorite song is playing. And so that was your mom energetically nudging you, just like the bird, to go to the store at that time to hear her favorite song. And so, but trusting that and having appreciation so that then the energy can flow within you, and allow that relationship to build instead of blocking it out and or not trusting it. So meditation and trust with signs and synchronicities. And what else? Getting out into nature and doing the things you love. So just truly in pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, a lot of times when we're in routine, we're again creating restriction within energy because we're so accustomed to how things feel that like we're not sensitive to the other things around us. And so to become sensitive to the signs, to the synchronicities, to the love, to the connection to our spirit teams, we have to break out of our routine and break out of that resistance energy that exists within our day-to-day, like very tight schedules and kind of familiar and comfortable things. So going even to like, I always say, like, go to a new coffee shop in a different town and just like listen to the sounds, listen to the, smell the smells and just like be a little bit sensitive in that space because you've never been there before, or do an activity that is like really outside your comfort zone. Take a workout class, a dance class, do an art class, anything that just like breaks it up for you and allows you to like live a little bit more, and creative stuff as well, and nature. Those are the things.
I love it. So good. Yeah, especially nowadays, I think I feel like we need to talk about social media. There's like so many distractions. We're constantly being bombarded with more and more and more, especially if your work is also based on putting yourself out there, like work, business, a lot of us have to use these tools. So how do you use them in a conscious way, and and this is a double question, and what do you think is our biggest block to accessing our own intuition when we are like, okay, I'm ready, I want to do this, I have my intentions ready to go? What do you think it's some of the things that kind of like drag us down a little bit from really tapping in?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it is the distractions, like you were saying, just like filling our time with things. I actually recently saw a TikTok video that was, it was a pastor, and I'm open to all religions, all spirituality. I think there's something to take from all of them. They're also very similar in ways that you wouldn't expect, right? So I'm open. Anyways, this pastor was talking about a story that he had with his daughter, and I'll share it because it was just so relevant to your question. He was in his living room. He's like a younger guy. He's in his living room. He has like a 9-year-old daughter that's listening to Party in the USA with her friends in her bedroom. And they're blasting the music, singing along. And she starts calling for her dad. And she's like, Dad, I need your help, whatever. And he's like, what? What do you need help with? And then she doesn't hear him because the music's so loud. And she's like, Dad. He says, what? Keeps going on and on. And then he says, it's just like us in spirit. It's just like us in spirit. We're screaming, help me, guide me. I'm ready. I set the intention. And then we're so busy. Every time you're alone, you put on a podcast, you put on a song, you put on the TV, you start to fill your time, even with spiritual activities, reading, all of the things. And you can't just be and listen and be guided. And it was really funny to hear him, sing Party in the USA over and over. That's what we're doing to ourselves all of the time. So really just allowing ourselves to be still. And that's where the meditation comes in as well. But just relaxing into the moment, not thinking about what you have to do next, not thinking about even next week or what happened in the past, just really coming into the present moment, which again, I think we can only do when we develop our own relationship to not only our spirit team. I think there's a major focus within New Age spirituality to be very connected to each of the angels, each of our spirit guides, each of our past loved ones, who's sending that sign, all of the things. Whereas, what does this all go around? And that is a beautiful energy of unconditional love and light, which you can call God, source, universe, creator, that is providing even like the experience for you to have with your loved ones here on earth right now, and when they are, in spirit and sending us divine wisdom. So developing a relationship with that entity as well, I think can really expand the heart chakra to relax into the human experience and be still, which then allows these other entities of light within our spirit team to provide really like kind of concrete and tangible communication with us as we go through our days, when we're still and when we feel this all-knowing presence, all-loving presence within our heart, more than we do listening and reacting and engaging with the stimuli that exist in the physical plane.
So accurate, so true. I also love that story
Yeah.
because that's how sometimes I imagine my loved ones.
Yeah.
And my guy's yelling at me like, "Girl, we're
We're right here. We're right here.
get with the program, you know."
Yeah.
Let's go. So I just love that imagery of the dad. Um, the other thing I wanted to ask you was about doubt and how does doubt play a role versus and then maybe you can talk a little bit about doubt and then trust and what are how do we use or let go
Yeah.
of those tools to help us not only with our own intuition but also with, let's say, knowing that we're on the right path. Like sometimes there is that feeling of like, am I really like living my life's purpose? Am I following the path that I'm supposed to be following in this lifetime? So just if you can talk a little bit about that and how have you overcome yourself those moments of doubt, those moments of like and lean more into the trust.
Yeah. I feel that with doubt in particular, the only time I'm doubting, my path or my purpose is when I'm doubting myself. And so, really getting honest with myself and recognizing that I've really come into the awareness or the conceptualization of the human experience to be that of an alignment to who I am is my purpose and not anything that I do. I'm not supposed to do a million readings a year. I'm not necessarily supposed to, do this or that. Whatever I experience in the present moment as I am living as me is my purpose. And the more that I can be in that alignment is literally all that matters. Life could be over tomorrow. Like I cannot plan my purpose to be, I need to do X, Y, and Z. I can have goals, I can have aspirations, but to place my purpose externally on things that I will do in my life didn't make sense to me. It didn't resonate to me. And so I try to live in every moment as authentically me, without fear, without judgment, without pain, without suffering, like actively engaging with my own soul and putting myself out there in uncomfortable places where I normally wouldn't go. Like, and that is living. Like, that is living. Living is not like, checking this box and doing this thing. It's aligning to your truth, which is so hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do or could imagine doing. Like it is so uncomfortable to put yourself out there. It's so uncomfortable to just like work on yourself even. But that is the purpose of coming down into this human experience. And the human experience is, I think of it as an earth school that's talked a lot about in spirituality, but that this planet is just a place where our souls come down to experience duality, to transmute the darkness into light. But it takes a conscious effort to do so. And a lot of times it's easier and more comfortable to sit in our darkness and to hide in our shadows. And so the purpose of this experience of life in my soul's experience in this life is to transmute the darkness that I've gone through into light and to allow that light to light the path forward for me in the present moment. And that path forward is just alignment. It's not anything external. It's just alignment. And then what has happened for me is that the right experiences or aligned experiences that I meant to do then pop up on my path for me to do. And so it's just, and that comes into trusting, right? So then you get this experience that pops up in your path because you've done the work, you're aligned, you're living your purpose of just being you. And then this opportunity comes up that makes you really nervous, or, it brings up a trigger or whatever. And it's like, that's the trust. And okay, I'm presented with this. I'm going to do it. This is going live on TikTok. I put it off for so long. I could look back at that and say I wasted time, that this was like, I had been told to go live on TikTok by several psychics before I did. And I have to be honest that at that time I was like, yeah, that's a pretty generic thing to say. Like, yeah, Kaz, go live on TikTok. So I was like, okay, great. Thanks for no help. The first time I went, for those of you who don't know about my TikTok journey, the first time I went live on TikTok, it was like the best experience of my life. I've created a huge community there. And I'm able to reach so many people with the divine wisdom through my alignment that is, I do feel is my purpose to do. So, and it's been the most beautiful experience, and yeah, just the whole community has been grown from it. But I resisted it for so long, and I could look back and say I wasted time. I wasn't living my purpose, and I could have regret and longing and, pain associated with even like not stepping into that sooner. But that was just how I was supposed to experience it. And that's the trust. I trust that I made those decisions back then for reasons that I may never know. But I know that when I ascend eventually into that other place, and when I go back home to this beautiful place of unconditional love and light, I'll look back and say, oh, that's why I did that. But for now, I'm human, right? So I just have to accept and love every experience that I'm given, and accept and love everything that's happened in my past in order to move forward or be in the present moment in the most aligned way.
There's just so many aha moments in that whole thing that I love it so much. I particularly, gosh, resonated with what you said about my purpose is not attached to what I'm currently doing. Because, like, I don't know if you said it you said it more eloquently. I am paraphrasing, but basically I feel like a lot of us, because of the society we live in, attach what we do, let's say career or parental status, with our purpose.
Yeah.
But at any given point, those things can change,
Yeah.
I can be a photographer one day, and then I become a mom, and then, and then I'm this and that. And we start to realize that these things are not who we really are. They're just roles that we are in that given moment playing. Like right now, I'm playing the role of asking you questions here, but then 10 minutes from now, I'm going to play the role of a mom, or tomorrow I'm going to play the role of a photographer. So it's like an ever changing thing. So the fact that you said so eloquently, like, I don't attach my purpose with even what you're doing right now, but rather like every experience of every moment, that is my purpose.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I don't know if it does for anyone else, but for me personally, it gives me an automatically fresh, like a breath of fresh air in my lungs, because, oh God. So what you're saying is that I just need to be me at any given moment, to just walk around being me, and not needing to attach all these things to the things I'm doing constantly, and the anxiety that generates.
Mm-hmm.
Did I waste time? Was I in the wrong career? Is my life unfolding in a terrible way because I didn't do, the live TikTok, go live on TikTok a year ago or 2 years ago when I got the first hit to go? You know what I'm saying? Like, as humans, we tend to have a reaction to those things versus just seeing them as like, this is exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Nothing else that you need to do. Your purpose is to just be you, to be here, doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. And I feel like we place our identity within what we do in order to keep ourselves safe, and so that when things go wrong, we can blame our external identity versus like, go within. And that's what I did first.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what do you mean by we can blame on just give me a little bit more on that.
Yeah. So when we're like placing so much of our identity on what we're doing versus who we actually are within, when things go wrong, it's like, oh, this storm is happening over here. I need to manage and control that. Or, this is happening over here. My boss did this, and oh my gosh, this part of my life. Or when somebody asks you like who you are and what you do, you say, you say I'm a photographer and I do this, right? And so because it's easier than saying, I am this soul that's here on this earth. I just go back to like I talk about this a lot, creating dating profiles when I was younger. And I would ask me for hobbies and like what I liked and all these things. And I was so like, my identity was my work. I worked in the hospitality industry for a long time and I worked a lot, many hours. So that was like my identity and my hobbies and stuff. I was like, oh, those don't really matter, but those do matter. Like the things that we do and we love matter. But yeah, so I just feel that when we place identity outside of ourselves, it creates kind of like a place where we can distract ourselves to and distract our storm to. Whereas the real storm is going on within in the misalignment to our truth and how we might not feel settled in that career, which then, creates all these other things that happen for us and creates so much stress for us that's just unnecessary. But it's hard to go within and kind of find yourself and find the good parts of you and come to terms with the places where you have disconnected from your truth. And just like now, if I were to create a profile of myself, like I have all these adjectives of, things that I love about myself and also things that I love to do that really light my soul up, not just things I like to do to say that I am someone that does those things, but that truly like make me feel good inside, that give me that purpose throughout my day. And it's not the purpose of, I just started horseback riding again. It's not that I'm a horseback rider that, is going to win a bunch of shows. It's like, no, my inner child was so happy as I was doing that. Like, that's something that I love. And that's me, and yeah, I hope that gave you some clarity.
At all. And also that type of, when you go with that type of energy into something, just because it gives you that pleasure, because it's coming out of my passion, it allows you to also be free, if that makes sense, because you're not holding it so tightly. You're just like, for now, it feels great to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm moving with passion and I'm moving, but I'm not attached to it so much that if for some reason I can't do this thing anymore. Let's say I'm a lawyer. Yeah. I'm attached to this identity of myself as a lawyer, but for whatever reason, suddenly I lose my license. I don't know. I can't practice law anymore. Now I'm lost. Like now my life has no purpose, no meaning because I can't be a lawyer anymore. Yeah. So I think when you speak on this, it automatically allows you to live the experience with your hands kind of open versus gripping, to something so tightly that it becomes almost like an obsession. And then therefore, like if that thing goes away from you, whether it's a relationship or an identity or a job, suddenly you feel completely lost.
Yeah, lost and broken. That was beautifully said.
Yeah, and that's when the fear kicks in. The fear kicks in and the anxiety kicks in of the potential of loss. Yeah. Of that job, of that status, of that home, or whatever it is that you are gripping to. Yeah. It's part of your identity.
And I find that a lot of people who are grieving, because I obviously encounter a lot of people that are grieving through my coaching and doing mediumship sessions, a lot of grief is just as much as the loss of the loved one that is no longer physically present with us. It's a loss of identity and being the caretaker, or God forbid, like being the mother, being the father, being the sister, being the brother. And when that's taken away, that piece of you that has filled, like, so I just imagine everything in energy, right? So you have your soul is here. It's always full. It's always this beautiful stream of light. And then this darkness and the identities that we have that are external to us, I see it as kind of like clouds over our energy, over our chakra system, which is right here and right in front of us. So the identity of the brother, the father, it's filling like this hole in your soul, or so you think. So your mind places that label on it, right? And so when it's ripped away from you, you feel like a piece of you is gone. When in reality, your soul is there to fill that spot. It always was. It was always meant to be there, but we're so disconnected from ourselves that we don't feel it. And so that's where it's like that stillness, that coming home to yourself and just like aligning to that higher power and that belief and that trust can fill those holes for you as you move through the changes in life. And how you spoke about attachment and like needing certain outcomes and feeling so lost when those things don't happen or things change. Was, you said it beautifully, but it's just like when we can fill those holes and that brokenness and that loss with our light, that is the true gift of life.
I wanted to ask you, like, thank you for sharing that. I think it's such a beautiful thing to understand about ourselves, and it takes away so many internal fears and anxieties about needing to,
Yeah.
fix, avoid with that anxiety. The other thing is, what would you say when you're connecting with spirit, whether for yourself or for a client?
Mm-hmm.
Is the overarching overarching message that spirit wants us
that's a good
to
question.
be aware of? Because
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
I hate to say it so bluntly, but I say it all the time in my classes. Nothing matters like except love. And it's not like lovey-dovey things. Like, do what you love, experience what you love, give love, and let all the other stuff go. Truly, this life, the way that it comes through from souls in heaven or the spirit world, and through my own meditations of connecting to higher entities of light, angels, God, source, universe, creator itself. It's like this every single day is a gift, and every moment is a gift, and like take advantage of it. Like enjoy it, because it can be gone in a second. It can go south in a second. It can go really positive in a second. Like, you just don't know. So every moment, all of the things that you think that matter don't, and just be in a state of peace and love. Like, why not? Right. And so we spend our whole lives like avoiding that and filling our whole lives with things externally to feel good. And when in reality, it's all within. And the second message is that they're with us and that they love us and that there's a lot of light that they are sharing with us, whether we're conscious of it or not. It's being shared, and we are being guided, and that we are never alone here.
I love that. I love that so much. I think this is personally why I think mediumship is so healing and so
Yeah.
needed in the world, because especially now, with everything that we have going on nationwide, worldwide, there's just
Yeah.
so much divisiveness. There's just so much, apparent suffering and physical suffering, and
Yeah.
mental and physical and spiritual. I wonder if you can talk a little bit also on what do you think makes people lose hope and faith to the point where their only solution is to exterminate? I'm going to use that word. I know it might not be the best word to use. Extinguish, let's say, their own light, or this physicality, in order to escape that pain. Is there anything you want to say? I know this is a hot topic that, lots of people may have different opinions on, but I think it's an important one with everything that's going on in the world and the amount of it happening, especially with younger people now too, choosing, to do harm to themselves or to take their own lives. So would you mind talking a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think that's been the hardest question throughout all of history. Like, how could all-knowing, loving source of energy allow such horrible things to happen in the world? And how could we trust that energy with the things that are being done? Like, and I just think it comes down to duality, and to there will always be darkness and there will always be light. And especially on this planet, because it's physical. And if we get really spiritual, like, we're in a third dimensional space here on Earth, which is very low energy compared to the rest of the universe. And that creates a lot more of duality. The way that I have been shown that this all works is that basically when we come down here into human life, we co-create our experiences with God, source, universe, creator. And it's an adventure movie, essentially. And it's like, hey, this is going to be really hard. It's going to be wild. Like, you're going to think, holy moly, like, what's going on down here? But you'll always end up back up here with me. And I will never leave you, but you might forget that I'm with you. And it's like, and you can fail, a million times, but you can always get back up, and you can experience the most beautiful love in the most beautiful, emotions in the entire universe. And then you can feel the lowest, and that contrast is going to give you so much evolution and so much awareness. So we have that conversation, we develop this plan, we develop all of our soul contracts that allow everybody in our lives to be in our lives, and our spirit teams to be who they are. We come down into this, human experience, and we lose it all. And the only thing that, we feel we have control over is how we're moving through life. And I think that that's where, like, self-sabotaging things come in, whether it is self-harm, whether it is, God forbid, like taking your own life, whether it is using substances to not feel the feelings of human life, because it's so hard to feel the highs and the lows. But, I think we have a choice to tune into the light or to not. And so for me, I didn't have any belief system before I was 30 years old. I didn't know or believe that there was a God or a universe or source, or our past loved ones were really in heaven. I didn't believe in heaven, nothing. And I used substances and other things to numb out my experience. And I realize now that that was honestly one of the greatest blessings of my life, because now that I have consciously decided to tune into the light and to shift the way that I experience my humanness in this world, like, I can use all of that to help others and help myself. But for those that are in that state of not trusting and not allowing the light in, it's hard for me to say this, but it is just this. We have the choice. We have the choice to tune into the light while we're here, or to stay in the darkness. And, I think we're all brought into that moment of awakening or aligning to the light in the time that we're meant to, with the higher power that exists. And it's especially not for any of us to lead someone else to. I find that empaths in particular are always trying to help and kind of insert themselves into other people's lives, especially if they've noticed that they're hurting. And support is amazing and love is amazing, but everybody's on their own divine path here. And I genuinely trust in my heart that even things that are happening on a world scale are happening for a reason. And our souls knew what they were getting into before they came down here. And the gift of this all is that we will always end up back in this place of unconditional love and light. But I think the greatest gift that we can give to ourselves is that being on this earth is just as much of a gift, and to take advantage in whatever way we can to the blessings that can exist, even in the smallest moments of this human experience, with all the pain, with all the suffering, like, just finding the gratitude in our heart for being alive, and, like, using that to inspire us to engage in activities that light us up and that allow us to feel inspired for the days, and to try to take us away from just trying to control, in whatever self-sabotaging ways it is, the feeling of being human, or like the feeling of control, like our ability to navigate the human plane and just allow it to happen. But every single moment tuning into the inspiration, the light, and the love within. And shadow work, we all come back to shadow work. Is the way that I found that within myself, and it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Like, it stinks to go back into the darkness of our childhood, right? Especially when we've had super traumatic things happen. I just got to a point where I was like, I can sit in the darkness and let it affect me for the rest of my life and live this life that is not in alignment with who I know myself to really be. Or I can go there and it stinks for a while, and then transmute it and allow it to help myself and others. And I think engaging in acts of service is also something that can really help us in aligning to our light and kind of getting it out of those self-sabotaging behaviors is like doing good things for others, recognizing that your light can inspire others, you being yourself and acting within a space of alignment to yourself and inspiration for yourself allows you to be inspiring to others. And like that feels so good for us as a soul and as a human being, to help others and to like facilitate growth through our own light, not just projecting things into people's lives, like empaths trying to like, control situations. Like truly, when we do the work for ourselves, our consciousness raises, our energetic vibration raises, and that not only helps align us to better experiences for us in our lives, but it also raises the consciousness of the earth, I believe. And the more people that step into that light and raise their own consciousness individually, it will actually shift the whole frequency of the earth so that those global things happen at a lesser frequency. The greatest advocacy work that you can do is to go with it.
I love that. That should be a quote right there. My other question was on a more practical tool. I'm a practical tool kind of girl. I need tools. For someone who's just starting out on their self-discovery journey, doing shadow work, getting in touch with the deeper sides of who we are and what triggers us, what would be a good exercise that we can even do on like a daily basis when we see the emotions come up?
Yeah.
When we see the trigger rise up, what would you
Absolutely.
recommend how they can start?
I think the first thing to do is to start a new narrative for yourself. This is what I did early on in my journey, like a 3-sentence story about your life. So for me, it was, my name is Cass. I am always present, calm, and positive, no matter what crosses my path. I am sober and I am grateful for all of the moments in my life, even the triggering ones, in order to help me evolve and become into the truest version of myself and the best version of myself. So creating a short narrative that reminds you of who you are and your light within, rather than all of the expectations and the things that, kind of jade us in our minds as we go about our days, and the identities and the patterns that we fall into. And then second, just having a gratitude list every morning or every night. I know it's for somebody with ADHD, it was really hard for me to commit to like journaling, like all of the spiritual gurus recommend every single day. But the one thing that I never faltered on was writing that narrative once a day, just to remind myself, and 3 gratitudes every day, whether it's from your day that just happened or your life in general. And not only writing the gratitudes, but really feeling in my heart, like, I am really grateful for even this time. I was like unemployed for a while, like trying to find another job, super stressed that I couldn't, but during this period, but I wrote down every day, I'm grateful for the time that I have, and so taking that fear and that anxiety and turning it into a gratitude. And that's that transmutation of the darkness to the light. So that's like a super practical kind of 2-step thing. And then if you want to take it one step further, I also recommend just aligning your chakras through like a 5-minute meditation. If you search on YouTube, 5-minute chakra balancing meditation, that can really help you as well.
Love that. If I came to you as a student on your workshop for shadow work, and I told you that I have anxiety when a particular event happens in my life, let's say, I'll just use a personal example because I think that's more, as in my own life, I've experienced the need at times to want to be perfect. And I don't mean any particular way, but like, let's say with a job that I'm doing, I want to give it all my best and I want to reach a certain, level of experience, of expertise, of whatever it is that I'm doing. And if I'm feeling that for whatever reason that day wasn't quite my best, I'll use my experience as a photographer, like I'm on set and I'm just not feeling the flow that I usually flow, the creative juices coming through me. And then suddenly the anxiety surfaces. How do I move through that? How would you recommend that I move through that?
One is to recognize when that first started happening in your childhood, which we talked about before, and getting to like the root cause of like when that pattern started for you and why that pattern started for you, and connecting to the inner child, which we can talk about after. One thing that I haven't talked about within shadow work that is super important is recognizing that all of these anxieties and all, they come from fear, right? And so really confronting the fear within our lives. What is the worst possible case that can happen if what you're expecting to happen happens?
Mm-hmm.
And just confronting that head on. We create all of these different scenarios in our head that all are the same fear, right? You know, if this happens, this is good. What is the fear? That you're not going to have the income that you had from the job. And that's where the trust comes in. Like, do you trust that you will be supported, you know, even financially by the divine? And do you feel that you can like let go and just trust that if that job doesn't work out, it wasn't aligned for you and that something better is on its way? And so, really confronting fears. And another thing that you can practically do to even start doing that, it actually has nothing to do with that particular situation of perfectionism. But by confronting small fears in your day to day, you kind of build up your energy
Mm.
to allow yourself to like feel empowered through any situation so that the fear of perfectionism becomes less noticeable as you're going through your job, as you start to like work on your fears. So I always recommend just like taking the silliest fear you have. For me, it was a fear of snakes at the beginning of my journey. And I was really scared of snakes. Like I avoided going outside in the summer because they were always in the yard. If I saw one, I would cry, scream, nausea, almost pass out, would not leave the house for several days. Like it was a thing. And when I was going through my awakening and I was really meditating a lot and I started to do the shadow work really heavily, I was like, that is so irrational. When did that start? So I went back and figured out when that started around the age of 6 years old. My grandmother was super scared of snakes. We don't have snakes that can bite around here, but you know, it was just like that programming. There were two girls in my class that were super scared of snakes. I remember watching a video of them and then like being like, should I be like them? And I kind of wanted to be like them. So that reinforced it. And one thing led to another. Now I can't leave my house because I'm so scared of the snakes. Like that's very irrational. And so I went back into that little girl that saw my grandmother, you know, be scared of snakes, that saw those other girls be scared. And I confronted her and I was like, you don't have to be like them, right? Like, and there was like that identity shift of like, you don't need to place identity. You were never scared of the snakes before that. And that's true. I was never scared of them. And in talking to her in meditation and a visualization exercise just to connect with that version of myself that still is in fear within me. And then second to that is exposure therapy is what I did. And I went out and I asked the universe to, you know, let me practice this. And lo and behold, I was walking in the park one day and there was a little snake. Right as I'm thinking about this, asking, okay, I think I'm ready. A little baby snake like runs over my toe in the woods. And just like when that situation popped up, to be very conscious of the fact that I am not the person that I was prior to this awakening and this work. Like did my nervous system react in the same way? Yes. Did I calm my energy, ground myself, and really consciously be aware of the snake is harmless. I am a different person and I align to that version of myself, not my old pattern. So taking a really silly fear and just maybe it's like you don't like driving on the highway. My grandmother's in my head right now. She hated driving on the highway. Maybe it's you don't like venturing far from home alone. Maybe it's no, you've never, a lot of times people don't go out to eat by themselves or, you know, have trouble doing things alone. Force yourself to confront the little fears so that when the big fears come up, you have more empowerment behind you to navigate them and to feel empowered to like move through them.
Yes, that's such a good advice because sometimes we put ourselves like in the lion's den, like first off, and it's like
Yeah.
then we get upset. Why didn't I have a different reaction? But it's like building up your stamina little by
Yeah.
little. Like you're not gonna run if you've never run. You're not gonna run a 10K today. Like just
Right.
go around the block and then
Right. Right.
2 blocks tomorrow. Just sort of building up that spiritual stamina, as you are saying. I want to finish finish this because there's like so many questions I can keep asking you, but I want to finish this with one thing. What would you, what is the one thing again that I feel like if you could tell everyone, if you could tell everyone about everything that you've learned through your spiritual journey so far, through connecting with spirit, through meditations, through sessions with clients, through communing with spirit, what would you want people to know either about themselves or anything that you want to talk about there?
Okay, that's quite the question too.
The big question.
I would share that you are never alone, number one, that everything is happening for your highest good. And it is truly, we have the ability to transmute darkness into light. And that everything in our lives is meant to teach us and to embrace those learning moments rather than resist them. And just get to know yourself, and get to know your connection to a higher power, which then leads you to a beautiful spirit team and all of these entities of light that can help us, but that everything is going to happen in the time that it's meant to. So to not stress, to relax, to get home back to yourself and allow yourself to move through this life in the lightest way possible, rather than resisting and controlling and needing so much, having so many expectations that aren't met. That's the first thing we talked about, is having these expectations of life and then feeling let down. Rather than have expectations of what can be happening external, just feel good about yourself in the present moment and allow that to lead the way.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I think that question could have been like a whole podcast episode.
I know that
I
question
had to
alone,
condense it.
especially when you talked about control, because that's another thing too. You know, that's
Yeah.
such a big role in our lives when we get into the mode of I'm going to control everything, especially in a society where we are taught like you need to be ambitious, determined. You know, it empowers control.
Yeah.
And now coming into spirituality, it says,
Nope.
surrender.
Yeah.
You want to be able to talk to your loved ones in spirit? Surrender. Surrender.
Yeah.
It's like deprogramming very old stuff that we've carried with us for a long time.
And I think that's funny you bring this up now too. Maybe the next episode needs to be on balancing the masculine and feminine energies, which has been very much in my awareness lately. I just recently made a post on social media about it, but the feminine is the intuitive like flow, right? And the masculine is that, you know, push forward in life, but it's not from a place of needing any certain expectation. And the intuitive part isn't to need to know your spirit guides, isn't to, you know, it's just about that balance of can you flow through life and enjoy it as much as possible without your mind and getting in the way.
Yeah. And labeling everything.
Yeah.
Good, bad, you know, because the event itself is neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Like the event of, for example, the snake, right?
Yeah.
It's a neutral, it's just about what it, because people that love snakes would see that as a beautiful event.
Yep.
I was walking down the floor and a beautiful little snake came on screen. Like everything to them. But then those that fear snakes are going to see this as a terrible, oh my God, so unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's just about how we are reacting to these neutral events that are happening in our lives and then letting go of the need to label them so that the mind doesn't attach itself and starts to create this whole story about, you see how I am unworthy because this event with the snake happened, and if God really loved me, God wouldn't have allowed this, and it starts to go down a really dark really fast.
Yeah, like that could easily, especially with where I was at with my spiritual growth at that point, easily have been, am I cursed? Did I call this in for myself? Am I aligning to energy? You know, all the scary things within the spiritual. But that's where I just go within. I'm like, no, this is a lesson. Like this is an opportunity for you to step into your light. Everything is an opportunity for you to step into your light. What do you choose?